Welcome back to the Scene Podcast, the show where we talk to the people behind the internet. Today's guest is Shelley Strater, a social media strategist with more than 15 years in the game, working across content, digital marketing, and brand strategy. Shelley thinks about social media a little differently. For her, it's not just about posts, algorithms, or trends, it's about human behavior. In this convo, we get into why brands still chase the wrong metrics, why community beats follow accounts, how creators with smaller audiences often have the biggest influence, and how to survive working in an industry that never switches off. But before we jump in, a quick thank you to Sked Social for putting this whole podcast together. If you manage social media for a brand, an agency, or even your own business, Sked helps you plan, schedule, and analyze your content across all social platforms, all in one place. It's built for people who take social seriously. Start your free 14-day trial now at skedsocial.com. All right, let's get into it. Shelley, thank you so much for joining us on the Scene Podcast. Absolute treat to sit down with you, actually, because you've been in the industry for how long has it been now?
Just over 15 years, I think.
That's wild. Yeah. So you're an OG.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That crazy millennial who's obsessed with social media. That's me.
So I'm dipping you would have had a real banging MySpace page back in the day.
Oh, for sure. No, I really did. It was all about the music and the content, of course, and getting people engaged with, your space, getting the likes, and also MSN. Are we calling that a social media platform or not really?
I think that was the original. I remember after school just jumping on straight away and just nudging all my friends. And
yeah.
That behavior sort of set in pretty early doors. I would have been about, early high school? So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then that would have been right about the time when, like, MySpace was a thing. I loved MySpace. I feel like I just cancelled that platform a couple of years ago because I was like, no one needs to see what I was doing way back yonder.
Yeah. I remember when Facebook first came out and had a few American friends and they're like, you got to get on this. And I was like, I don't know. I created like a page and I was like, I don't know if this is going to take off. Little did I know that it was going to become the biggest thing for felt like 10 years before.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I even remember particularly working back in like corporate early in my career, and they'd be like, oh, let's all do like Facebook events. It's not necessarily something, I know there's still people that get around the Facebook events, but from where they were to where they are now, maybe I'm just not using them properly. But I also don't think many people are using Facebook as they used to do either. Used to be such the thing to, pop an event in, do your local area marketing, whatever that may look like, bring everyone in. And Facebook was like such a powerhouse for organic content, I would say, as well. It's kind of more for me shifting away from that now. And really, I'm for me like more using probably Instagram for that more aesthetic style and community building. But yes.
When did you know that you were going to do this as a career? Like having all these platforms and then realizing, oh, maybe I can just like earn a living by doing this for other people and, turning this into like a life. Like when did you know and how did it all like happen for you?
Yeah. So I didn't actually feel like I fell into social media. It was a bit of a natural evolution of how I've always understood people. So even before platforms were like part of my role, I was observing like tone and visuals and words, different environments and how people kind of responded to things. It was all really around like the psychology of people. I know that sounds really funny, but I've always been a bit of a sponge in my day-to-day. And, I've got, I think over like 15 years of digital marketing experience across B2B and B2C, business to consumer and business to business. And I noticed a huge gap in brands, often had a clear message. But on social, the emotional connection was just completely lost. And so I would sort of bring that in around like the psychology of people and then the emotional connection. And that really led me to sort of focus on human behavior, like I said, people's reactions, cultural, seasonal, shifts. And social became the space for me where I could really apply that understanding in real time. So today I don't really see content as just posts and trends. I really kind of see it more as like living ecosystems where brand vision, audience behavior, experiences all kind of like interact all together. And then I think I've really tried to figure this out for a long time, but because I see such a holistic big picture of all these different things, I then become the filter, and then I translate, and the translator, let's say, between what a brand wants to say and how people really want to feel, and then turn that into then a strategy, into narratives that then truly resonate with people. And I always found myself, particularly in my corporate background, you're kind of only in, you've got one role. Your role is just to do that job. Whereas I would think so broader, I would think about end to end, and they'd be like, Shelley, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. I'm like, I can't. Like, I want to know the start, the middle, and the end. Because I think it's because I understand how people react and consume, how to create in so many different areas. So that's what kind of helps sort of build that social story. And then it's also understanding the different platforms and how they work and how people interact on there as well. Because I mean, too many times, particularly a lot of my clients are like, oh, I'm putting the same content on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And I'm like, yeah, cool. That would have been great like 10, 15 years ago. Maybe 10 years, 15 is a bit of a stretch because that's kind of, where it started. And, now it's all around like diversification, understanding where people come to what platforms do what, and how we consume that data and how we consume the content that we're seeing. And then I think as well, where this kind of all sort of started around like my journey, I was always the friend that would always be taking photos of food, moments. Oh, Shell, just send me the content or just tag me. So I was always that girly pop who was happy to be in the background getting the content, and then also watching people's behaviors. So it's about the smaller moments, but it's also about like the story that you then create. And I find that in a lot of the work that I do now, particularly in the event content space, where I'll be booked for an event and it will be very like start to finish. So like just say we're at a Hens, for example, people will come in, they'll start greeting, the drinks may not be ready, but then the mingling's kind of there. And a lot of what I do is like recreate that story to being like a moment that could have been really quite lost to being amplified and really sharing what it should have looked like. So therefore, people that then see it on the other side are like, damn it, I missed that event because that looked epic. I mean, you could kind of say it was false advertising, but it's not. I've just kind of like stitched the quiet moments and then turned that into a really positive narrative. So yeah.
I love that. I love when people can showcase, like there's a lot of cool stuff out there, but I think distribution and creativity is the key. Hey, it's like, yeah, you might have nailed this one part of what you're doing, but how do you showcase that and tell that story of what you've already sort of created? So is that the best sort of like motivation and kicker for you when you work with clients and then they see like you can like amplify their vision and showcase their vision on what they've sort of come up in their head, like working with those types of people? Is that motivation for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't want to sort of have to retell the story too much, but also do it in a way that suits them. Like this example of the Hens that I just gave, the girl was, she was quiet and lovely, but she wasn't too over the top. So you have to be mindful when creating that concept that you don't, particularly when it comes to the music overlay, if you choose to do so. Yeah, I do enjoy really thinking about, again, the psychology of that person, of that brand, of that client, and then rebuilding and retelling that story that suits them. So it always comes back to who are they, what's their authentic like point of difference, and honing in on that rather than looking at trends and being like, oh, this song's really popping off. Like, that song, Where Is My Husband? That, oh, you don't know? No, oh, you're damn, not going to lie. But there's this song at the moment. It was like an end of year song, and it was really popping off online. And I think it's by Ray, R-A-Y, Raya or something. Anyway, it's a really popping song, and I would have loved to have overlaid that song onto this particular hens piece because, you know, she's at her hens, the girly pops her around. It worked. But every single time I overlaid that, knowing the people that were at the event, knowing the bride, it just didn't match. And so that's what I mean. I really think about quite deeply a lot. Like my husband was like, Shell, like, have you thought of the song yet? And I'm like, no, it took me 3 hours to find an appropriate fitting song that suited the vibe, the her. I don't just like everything that I do comes with like it's stacked with a lot of emotion and thought. Could say I'm a thinker, but there's a lot of thinking that happens in this.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I remember creating playlists for events that we used to run, and I would spend so much time like figuring out the order of songs. And yeah, this time I think people are going to be doing this, and like no one would have a clue at how much time I've spent on that particular thing. But it's like I think that's brand, isn't it? Like that deep intention, and like you were saying, like how you can zoom out. It's human behavior. I love that. I like social that, and you get that real time feedback. Like you put something out there, you get it straight away. It's not like you have to wait. It's like people are sort of on there saying they love it or they hate it. But what about like making stuff for clients versus like making stuff for you? Like what's easier?
You know, I've said that this is going to be my goal for 2026 is making more content for myself. I love making content and coming up with strategies and brand opportunities for clients. And man, I could literally put me into any room. Like I just saw a girlfriend on the weekend. She's got a ski business and she was just like, you know, for like selling clothes and she's going to go overseas. And I was like, man, you could do this, like popping off so many ideas. And she's like, and I was getting really excited. But then when it comes to myself, even though I know what I need to do and I know what my focus is, I know that there's only one as me. I have just so many ideas of where it wants to go and what I want to do that I become like, and then I see what other people are doing. I'm like, no, Shelley, stay focused. Like, that's like a part of like, you know, looking into other people's strategy. I find it hard. I find it really hard because there's a lot of great content out there, but at the same time, there's a lot of great content, but that doesn't meet my strategy. That's not what I'm about. And I think there's only one of me. So therefore, I need to be producing content that, you know, fits back to my narrative and what I'm about. I do find it hard though, you know, going back to what I said earlier around being that filter who sort of absorbs a lot of information across so many different areas to then articulate that into the so what of what I do. Like, yes, I frame myself as a social and content bestie, but I'm also on top of that, I'm a bit of like a film director where, you know, I don't just think about the one little small moments. I think about the setting, what people are going to be wearing, the set, it all to sort of come around to the whole ecosystem of it. I really find that hard to be like, how do I articulate that and then turn that into content? Maybe I just need to spend like a whole day of just like me time to be like, what do I want to be? You know, and prioritize myself and the business so that, you know, I can actually get the right content out there. But I mean, like anything, like you see ideas from other people and you're like, oh, that could be a really cool thing to mix into my space and translate that into something that I do. Yeah, I do struggle with prioritizing like content for myself. I'm not going to lie.
How do you stay like disciplined? Because I'm the same. I see like I'm doing the stuff for Sked and you're seeing other people do stuff and it's like, oh yeah, I like that idea, but is that distracting from the goal and stuff that I set out to do? Because I'm all for changing my mind and evolving things, but also I don't want to keep chasing stuff where I feel like, you know what I mean? Like I just like I've come up with this strategy. I'm going to follow it through because I know I'm going to give it the best chance if I don't get distracted. But then these things come up and social's so like trend heavy and it moves so quickly. How do you stay disciplined?
I think I just go back to my core of like what I'm about. And I'll see things and it'll pop off and I'm like, that's amazing. Like, I love that that works so well for you. And I don't like to retrofit like concepts or ideas into what I'm about or what a client's about, particularly when it comes to trends. Like, I just try and stay focused on, okay, that's a really good idea. But if I get to the point of having to brainstorm and overthink it too much, then I'm like, well, I just have to leave it. And being disciplined, I think it's around so many different things. It's, oh my God, the amount of notes that I have amongst like my phone, my computer, in Sked, on my desk here, everywhere around the 101 things that I have to do, and stay like focused on that. Yeah, you have like your to-do lists, and then you get like the occasional ideas pop up somewhere. But how do I sort of stay disciplined?
I feel like it's hard. It's so hard. And like risk taking, like I feel like some of the best posts or the best things that I've done have been the ones where I've been scared to click the post button because it's like, I don't know if this is going to work. This feels a bit too much or
Yep.
whatever it is. Like, what's your like appetite for like taking risks in this industry?
Oh, you actually just have to press a button and just do it. If you see the opportunity, just do it. Also, as well, you are the only person in your space that knows like what you're pitching at and whatever. It's a point of view. It's going to shape somebody else. They might see it in their feed and be like, oh, that could be really cool. Like, it's that point of view. You just have to believe in yourself and just do it. Like, some of my most recent content is a bit of a series around like providing inspiration to people and just being like, it's not always about the trends, not about optimizing. It's just about what you think, being authentic to you and what you believe. And if you have the idea and you see something, then just post it. Just give it a go. I mean, worst case, you can do trial reels and see how that gets you anywhere, or try a super overlay and see if that thought-provoking piece of content, overlay is going to get people then thinking more around your content. I would definitely just say, just post it, give it a try. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Who cares? I think that's also been the biggest thing. Like, the worst somebody can say to you is no. Who cares? Awesome. And once you kind of get over that, like, little bit of like it's so hard to be like, oh, I just want to be a people pleaser and get it all done. Someone says no and they provide you feedback. Cool. We move on. We keep going. We keep it selling. Because I think I really chased, and I think I was quite sensitive when I worked in corporate around, I want to be the best. I want to do this. And, I want to be doing it all in my space. But the amount of knockbacks you get and the amount of decks you have to build because someone has said, no, I don't understand, I need to rebuild or have a different thought or a different angle, particularly now there's that. And then particularly now when I'm working by myself, if I can literally just sit there and not do anything and be afraid of what people say, as particularly no, then I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm not going to learn anything. And the insights that you get are almost better that come from the no's, because you can kind of use that as a leverage or a lever as like, okay, this didn't work. And that's your piece of content to sort of bring into educating more people around what may have worked for you, but give it a try over here as well. So
what about like listening to the feedback and data versus like your own intuition and what you think? Is that a constant battle? Because I know like early doors when I started doing podcasts, there was a couple of people saying, I don't like the swearing and I don't like this. And it's like, well, we can't do it if we're not ourselves like this. So it's like, how do you sort of think about that?
Yeah. Sorry, just talk to me again about that one. Sorry.
Like the data over like your gut feeling on things where it's like, all right, I'm listening to this feedback, but I think but your gut feel might be like, if I just keep pushing through this, I think there'll be good stuff on the other side type of thing.
Yeah. So I do believe in what I see in the data, and how I like translate that. Like, only recently, it's end of the month, and I looked at the insights that were given in SCAD, and I was like, it was saying that, which is not a bad thing. It was just saying that, like, even though your follower reach was really strong, your engagements and your growth on the page for the month were lower than the previous month. And I was like, cool. But I then still see the positive. So it's just, and I also need to be really careful around how I articulate that. I can understand and I can use that as like a leverage sort of build up. But when it comes to my clients, if I said to them, oh, we got, X amount of likes, but then we were down here, they would freak out. I like to try and then in that moment think about all the other aspects that are happening, in the world. Is it a seasonality thing? What's happening? The AO was on. Are people spending less time on social media? Where are people? What were they doing? Why were they not interacting with this post as much? Whilst there was likes there, the data is saying that people weren't necessarily like viewing the content as much. I know that kind of goes against like, who cares about saying no? But I do believe that you can kind of like change the narrative slightly to better off like your end game and ensuring that you can say, okay, like it didn't work for this particular piece in this moment because of, summer season, people are spending way too much time, out and about, less time on social media. Therefore, in February, we're really going to focus on making our captions or some of our supers on our content a lot more thought-provoking. So therefore, the content's more engaging.
You've been in the industry for so long. I'm sure leadership buy-in has changed over time from when you first started, no budget. No, it's just like, oh yeah, mate, we have to have a Facebook page or we have to have this up, but like whatever kind of thing, to now being the forefront of people's attention and how people find businesses. Like I'm sure the relationship with leadership and that has changed over time. What's your experience in that been like?
Based on what we were saying before, I definitely found throughout my career, social and content was not a space that businesses really invested in from an organic content side. It was always, one or two people in a space that needed to have everything and so many eyeballs on it. But the paid side, the performance side, was something that they really invested all their money and time into. But the thing is, the two and two kind of go together, and they do go together. They work together. If you aren't spending time in creating good content that fits your audience and fits your brand and what your position is, then it doesn't matter how much money you spend on paid performance, your content and your so what may not get across. And the amount of decks and education that myself, the team, likely myself, was putting forward and trying to advocate for, invest in your content, invest in your socials, invest in education. That's the space that's going to grow and build. We saw that happen a lot during 2021 when COVID happened, right? There was so many businesses who were like, okay, we need to change our content strategy. Yeah, it was probably like only a couple of people working in the team, but a lot of big businesses like Kmart and Target pivot their content strategy to being more online, to making it more authentic and relatable content that people are then really honing into. And then you saw other brands, bigger businesses, that just fell by the wayside because they weren't adapting to the change. And so that whole area of like content and strategy for them in that space, because they invested in education in that space, has now grown like in their own amazing way. And people are posting about it on every bloody channel. For such a daggy place, no offense to Kmart and TikTok, no, not TikTok, Kmart and Target, it's now something that, everyone's talking about to go get fashion apparel from because they made it cool again. It kind of lost its way. But I would definitely say when it came to like me in those positions, or because for me across like the 15 years, I worked a lot in the performance side. I worked in the content side and I worked in the organic side, sometimes all at once or within a team, sometimes separately, but it all kind of, as I said, connected all together. And I found it quite hard that there was not a lot of investment in me in those particular categories. It was all up to, me doing the research myself and taking in, the day-to-days. What do I see on the channels? Understanding the platforms. Yes, we got, the social app leads who would come in and they talk about around how we could further invest in said platforms. But it wasn't like there was no depth to it. Like, I want to know more, give me more. So therefore I can understand like consumer behavior. And I think as well, they were probably still quite new, trying to figure out what they are within Australia, because all of the case studies we were getting were from overseas. So it was really hard to then translate back to the Australian consumer. And I would definitely say the Australian consumer loves trust and authenticity and what that looks like, and is trying to give that like real life gauge. But yeah, I think that when it came to, allocating spend and time for, investing in myself, it was just whatever I did in terms of my research, in terms of like what I thought social was, based on me jumping into each of the different platforms, understanding it, being across it, sharing my opinions, lots of test and learns, honestly, so many test and learns. And if you don't test and learn, then you actually have nothing to fall back on. I even do that with my clients now. Excuse me. Like an example is one of my clients, I was seeing a lot more views and engagement from YouTube and TikTok, just to sort of get that brand presence out there. And I was like, how about we reduce how many posts we're doing on Instagram and Instagram and Facebook, so that we can leverage that to build that brand awareness. And I'm doing a 4-week test and learn to see if I can reduce the amount of posts, but then still get enough views on other spaces. And as well, views is not always a primary benchmark, I would say. For me, I always, it's a bit of a secondary benchmark. But in terms of being able to get your brand message out there quite quickly, those two platforms were doing that for me in that moment. So definitely try and test and learn content if you possibly can.
You mentioned like benchmarks and stuff. Like, what are the metrics that you look for? Are there underrated metrics that you're always sort of keeping your eye on that matter more to you than maybe others?
Yeah, I typically go for my primary benchmark is reach, always. Reach and engagement rate. I mean, everybody calculates their engagement rate so differently. But, however you choose to do that is entirely up to you. I think, and it also as well, we're probably going to talk about it later, but more views. Like, I like views. I think it's such a great thing, but it's also one that doesn't mean that your post is doing well either. So, and I think that's quite funny because people are like, oh, Shell, my content's doing so well because I got, 10,000 views. And then I jump in and I have a look and I'm like, oh, that looks great. But there's no engagements or no comments. But they're like, oh, but I've got 24,000 followers. They're coming. They just haven't seen it yet. Yeah. And then I've also seen that it's been boosted. So cool, we're boosting something to try and get exposure, but it's getting lots of views, but then the content isn't necessarily translating or resonating with anyone. So therefore it's not sticky enough that you're not getting any engagements or the community's there. What do we need to do to sort of retell that story in a way in which is going to make it sticky? Not only, build your following, but also, have your community engage. So I also always think that there's a bit of like a misconception, let's say, around how views should be looked at. It's, we all kind of know a view is simply someone watching, maybe for like 3 seconds, maybe by accident. It's a nice to have. If you get like 2,000 views, you're like, woohoo, how good's that? And I think it's also hilarious as well, like even on TikTok, particularly last year and the year before, and I would even say like maybe for the last 5 years, there was this whole conversation around how do I get my TikTok to be over like 200 views? And I do believe that. And I too am always like, oh, I'm so conscious. How do I get it like over the 200 views? But if I have more comments and likes and saves and shares, and I've got less than 200 views, I'm happy, because it shows me that my audience is interacting with my content. But why are the views? Like, it's a bit of like a catch-22 at the same time. So, as I said, like what really matters around your engagements is the likes, comments, DMs, saves, shares. They're really important to me. And if you are struggling to like connect with your community, go live in real time. What's something that I'm starting to do with a couple of clients and people who start following me is instead of just, seeing the follow come through, I'm like, I actually engage with them. So instead of doing an automated like bot message thing, which I see a lot of people do, I either jump in their DMs and I say, hey, I'm Shell, so great, welcome here. And that starts to spark that conversation. They're interested. They want to know what you do. I did that just last week on TikTok. And a girl, she started her own business as like, it's called After. It's like a drink. It's what's it called? Like a tablet or something. She's still trying to figure it out. But I think that it's going to be like a pill that you take, before you have a big night out. And she's like, can you just tell me what I need to do to sort of get my story out there to build my community, rah. Free advice, She wanted to have this conversation. So I was like, sure. Don't get me wrong. Like I have people who book me and bill me for that sort of stuff on a daily basis. But at the same time, it was around building that community. Now, every single time that I do my post, she is the first person to like, comment, share with her friends. So I'm really trying this year in 2026, and I'm advocating for pushing that community message out. And how do we go deeper than that surface level stuff to really engage with every single one of our clients, not clients, but our community.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people love projecting and posting, but they don't like having the combos. Like it's hard to have that one-on-one convo. And I think the people who really go well are the ones who have that deep connection with their community. I remember back when we were working with influencers for our company, and I would really look, I wouldn't even care about followership. Like the best ones for me that I would love are the ones with like a couple of thousand followers and like 60 comments. And it's like, these people have the actual influence. They don't get the love that they probably deserve or necessarily maybe not even want, but it's like, there's so many of those people out there. And it's like, they're the ones that you kind of want to work with, not the ones that, and like big followerships and stuff. I think people can get sick of the same story a lot of the time as well. It's like, yeah, cool, whatever. It's like, I don't know. For me, I like fresh, interesting perspectives and points of views on things. And a lot of the time it's those ones with not necessarily the big vanity numbers, but you look at their content and you're like, it might just be a photo of them and their friends and there's like 80 comments and you're like, okay, this person in their circle of friends is the person with influence, like if you got a product, it's like, these are the types of people that you want to target.
Absolutely. I agree with that. When you were talking, I was like, yes. That is so what I look forward to. And it's really hard because I think for a long time, we have been chasing follower count. And we have been like, oh, well, if they've got 240,000 followers, then their engagements are going to be amazing. They're going to have such high influence, la-di-da-da. Not always the case. And I've worked with some personalities, influencers, who have had big numbers. But when it comes to their content, it's not always they're getting the views, but they're not really getting the engagement. So what are you posting? What do you need to change? Like, what does that look like? So from another angle. And then secondly, I have a lot of clients who have literally like less than 1,000 followers, but they're really trying to build their community. And how do you then engage with that community and build that up? What does that look like? So I think to your point as well, I'm always looking at, it's not necessarily always about your follower count. I feel like that's a bit of a misconception in the industry as well. I think it's a nice to have to sort of show your influence, but if you were a brand looking to work with influencers, I would definitely, question them on, okay, cool, you've come to me, you've got 500,000 followers. What's your engagements like? What are your saves like? What's, I want to read all of your comments. I think that's also just goes back to me being quite anal in this space though. But at the same time, I wouldn't just look at someone's, vanity metric and be like, oh, cool, there's so many different things that you need to look at, whether that's like their content style, who's engaging, who's resharing that content. I think that little like thing on Instagram that where you reshare is vital to sort of see the success of that particular influencer or personality. I definitely wouldn't be, particularly now with like a lot of my clients, I don't necessarily say, don't worry about your follower count. It's a nice to have. Even with, I would say as well, people unfollowing you, which happens all the time, it's okay, because I would rather lose people. They don't want to hang around for my content or what you're sharing or what, brand. They're the people you don't want. You want to be focusing on building your engagements, the community. What is the content that they best receive and understand? Getting in their DMs, it goes beyond just being like, what do you guys want me to talk about? And we see it all the time, where influencers, personalities, brands share, what do you want me to talk about? How about you do the thinking for them and ask them the question? Do you think this top looks good on me? What would you change? Do you have any styling advice for me? Ask them the questions, not get them to answer back to you. I think we need to sort of change this mindset of having to ask for things and expecting our community to respond back. We need to be a little bit more pointy in how we approach them and actually ask for their opinion. So, for example, I like to sort of use my own platform, my own personal platform, as a bit of like a testing ground for what I could sort of do to approach like different pieces of ideas or concepts or whatever, which I did the other week. It's actually on my TikTok account on my friend Shell's. And it was a story. I shared a story, something that happened to me. I don't know if you've seen it, but I was in my kids' daycare the other day, and the reception lady goes, "Oh, so you got 2 in daycare and you got 1 on the way?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I'm not pregnant." And I was like, this shirt's just done me dirty. So then literally when I walked in from being at daycare, I set up my phone, really in that like hated moment of just being disappointed. Oh my God, I'm fat. And recorded myself being like, "Hey, do you guys think this top makes me look fat?" And it popped off. I had like over 177,000 views, but also the comments were, I think I had like over 4,000 likes, and then like over 400 different comments of people saying, yes, that top does make you look fat. And then people going, "Oh, she's beautiful." Like there was just so many different angles of community where people were sort of adding in their value. And even though, it kind of, the video popped off for like 3 days, then I had the brand reach out to me and be like, "I'm so sorry the shirt did that to you. Here's a $150 voucher that they sent to me to go buy new clothes." Like that's what community does. Like they get around you, they support you. So what I'm trying to say is like, by us asking our communities will enable more conversation, more positive, healthy conversations. And then if you can bring that back to your brand by like asking more, then you should inevitably get a bigger community.
I think interaction is the heavy sort of thing that you're mentioning there. It's like having people involved and not just like they're participating in the actual community rather than just being sort of asked these sort of blanketed questions. And I'm thinking like we're building the scene Slack community, and it's not about the numbers and how many people, it's about the quality. It's almost like, I think it's even cooler that sometimes things are a bit smaller because it feels a bit more exclusive and the right people are there. Because I think sometimes you build things really quickly and then people are too scared to say stuff, where if it feels a bit like you're not building it for those reasons and you're just building it for the quality and the connection and the interaction, I feel like that's when momentum happens and things, it's not always like, like you have a plan, but it's all these different paths that shoot off from that sort of plan that you might have had. So I love the fact that you're mentioning like interaction and having like two-way conversations and speaking to people. But what about like being in an industry that's so like reactive, like burnout, mental health, like thinking about that, where I feel like I'm always on, like I consume social media all day, every day, and I love it. And that's why I do it. But sometimes it gets to a point where it's just like, okay, I feel like I've watched every video on TikTok. I feel like my mind's about to like explode. Have you sort of put in boundaries or reached like a breaking point where you've consumed too much and it sort of stifled your creativity and things like that?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think it's such a big conversation, particularly for those who work in social media. Like we need to be really kind to ourselves, and I think have a community of people who are just like, "Oh my God, we get it." Like the scroll just keeps scrolling. It's not 2016 anymore where, you'd get to the bottom of your feed, particularly on Instagram, and there'd be no more. You'd be like, "How good, I can switch off now." That is not an option. You just got to keep going, keep scrolling. I think for me, I definitely came to that end of last year where I was just like here, there, and everywhere with content, opportunities, and people, just because I was literally just chasing, doing it all. And I have such a passion for it. But what I was finding, a massive decline in my creative energy, that, I think I'm really good in the moment talking with people around, okay, here's my brand, here's my opportunity. And I'd be like, pow, 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 do all these things, like similar to that example before. Whereas I was finding I'd go to meetings and with new clients who I want to put my best foot forward, and they'd say, oh, what about this and what about that? And I'd just be like, I just couldn't get there. And so therefore, sometimes I'd write it down, what I was thinking, and then it would take me like 2 days to come to the so what. And that's too long in our space. Like, you need to be really reactive within that moment. You need to sort of like, again, be that filter. So it was a massive learning for me because, given my experience, I would just be like, whatever, like I'm happy to do work whenever, however, whenever you need me, I'll get it done. That's the world of social media. And I've kind of lived with that for the last couple of years. And I would say the last 15 years. And I think it was also hard as well that when I'd have teammates who wouldn't want to work on weekends, I found that hard to understand because I had been brought up in this space of like, we're always on, whether you're doing a pay campaign or organic or you're doing an event, you need to be on. Going back to what I was saying earlier around, end of this year, not having that creative momentum anymore or that energy to sort of keep me spicy, I had to be like, Shell, you need to get off. Like, you need to get off. And I literally disconnected myself from social media, turned off my phone, didn't sleep with my phone next to my bed. I just needed time out. And I think in that point, that burnout of being so heavily consumed and overconsumed, particularly when it came to, okay, at that point, looking at what my strategy was and then what everyone else was doing, if you start feeding the algorithm then starts feeding you more content around what you should be doing on social, and then it just levels up, and you're just like, whoa, this is so overwhelming. And I think by that point, I was like, oh, girl, like, you need to get off here immediately. Because I was making bad decisions. I wasn't having healthy conversations. I, too, was feeling so consumed with social media. So I made the executive decision just to sort of, I was still monitoring my clients, but at the same time, I needed to get off social media. And coming into 2026, I look at social media now and I see what's going on. But then I never use what other people are doing and then build that back to what I want to do and my strategy, because otherwise you get so consumed in it that your ideas just evolve completely and be a natural overthinker. But I definitely would get around, and I encourage people to get around taking, some days off, whether that's you choose a day in the week on a Sunday, be like, nah, Sunday's not about social media, it's about family day, or going out and doing a walk or listening to some music, or if listening to music's too much, do some relaxation, find that, reground yourself. I know it sound funny by saying that, but like sometimes it's as easy as just taking your shoes off, stepping outside, finding some grass somewhere and reconnecting. I definitely found, looking after myself, all of myself, not just what's in here. But I love to go to the gym. So I prioritize going to the gym now 3 times a week, which in turn has sparked so much creative juice that I'm like, why was I doing this before? Secondly, I also have reconnected in doing kinesiology, which is around like regrounding myself, looking at my, nervous system and reconnecting there, and that paired with the gym and taking some time off on a Sunday to reconnect. Oh my God, I am more focused. I have way more creative energy than I ever had before. I'm excited, and I can work across like 10 different projects at once, know exactly what everything's doing. It just kind of feeds into like my Virgo energy. But like, if you had asked me to do something like this last year, I probably would have been like, no, I've got it. I've got it down pat. And that's the thing, is that we think that we're okay until we're not. And it kind of was like, I needed to take the realization for myself. It didn't matter if like my girlfriends are always like, Shell, slow down, like you're doing a lot. I don't want to hear it from you. You have to tell yourself that. I know that sounds really preachy, but like from being in a really dark place end of the year, just doing it all, and then to where I am now, and I know it's only literally been like what, 4 weeks, and making those healthy decisions for myself, the impacts of that are so much more rewarding because, I'm getting opportunities because I'm taking the time to switch off, because I have the capacity to now think about the things that I wasn't able to think of before. I can be more reactive, but also be quite flexible and setting those boundaries for myself as well. And I think as well, you don't have to work with everyone. You can choose what you want to do, and you need to be the one, that decision maker, which I was definitely not that girl last year. Like I was like, I'll do it all because I can.
Yeah. And it's funny, like nothing changes unless you have to be the one to actually want to do it. And I think like when you see like things happen in a positive, like you make those changes and good things happen, it becomes addictive to just be like, okay, like I'm on the right path. Like it's like reaffirming, um, which I love. Some solid advice there, but Ali, awesome to chat with you. If people want to find your stuff, where they find you?
Oh, you can find me in so many different places, but you can definitely find me on the handle My Friend Shells, on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, it all, everywhere. And I'm on all the socials. Yay!
Love that. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Locke. It was great chatting with you.